there, Leo Manor Mountain, back again in the Forest of Bowland. And as you know from the title, the thumbnail, I'm testing out a new tent. Now, this is a very budget tent, and I'm in my testing grounds, as I like to call them. We're just going to go up Faresnape Fell. It is a bit windier than I thought it would be, which has me a bit worried, just simply because this tent, well, it is very budget. It's a Euro hike, which is, as you may or may not know, it's Go Outdoors, really cheap brand, and well, yeah, the poles are fiberglass. So I'm hoping it dies down a little bit, this wind. It should be doing, but you know what it's like. Weather forecast can be wrong. So let's hope we don't get any pole snaps with them being fiberglass. But as I say, we'll test it, see if it's any good for actual wild camping, or whether it just belongs in a field with a bunch of hippies at a festival. So let's go and see what it's like. Trig. Right, so here we are at today's destination, and now I'm going to find a nice little spot somewhere, probably my usual spot to be fair, and pitch up the tent, and yeah, let's hope it stays up. So let's get it up. Right, so the tent is up. That was hard work, that. I mean, I have had it up once before, but in my house. But that just seemed like just a bit of a pain in the arse, to be honest. So, yeah, not too impressed with that. Right, let's get in it. Right, so first impressions, not great. As I said, putting these poles up was really hard work. They just didn't seem to flow in the sleeve that well, and when you're trying to get it into the eyelet, the hooks, that basically the poles go into a hook, and that's how it gets its stability, if you will. And yeah, I couldn't for the life of me, I was struggling to get them in there. The guy lines are okay, nothing great. The pegs are terrible. Now, I didn't bring any spare pegs because I didn't want to. I wanted to do this as though this is my first ever tent, and I just wanted to use this as though someone who wants to go start wild camping thinks, oh, I'll buy a cheap tent, I'll go to Go Outdoors, they should sell a good tent or whatever, and then they see this, and this is £45, and they think, oh, that's all right, that's not too expensive, and I'll see if I enjoy wild camping. You know, if you do buy one of these and you go wild camping, I'd be careful. Like, I'm not in the best weather for this, and it was supposed to be better than this, don't get me wrong, but so far, I mean, it is waterproof, I'll give it that. There's no water coming in. It has started to rain. I don't know, I don't feel like, if I was in my Helm 2, I don't feel like I am gonna have a great night. But you never know, I might be absolutely fine. But yeah, these fiberglass poles, they put me off a bit. This tent would be fine if you're in a festival or whatever, but I've got all night now in this tent, if it lasts that long. If it does, fair play to it. I mean, the weather right now, I think it's forecasted 45km/h winds, so that's like what, 26, 27 mile an hour. And it dies down in the morning. We're expecting a pretty nice morning, to be honest. Just got to get past the evening. I mean, it does feel cheap, but it's £45. I'm just interested to see whether this is a good alternative to someone who is a first-time wild camper who wants to see if they'll enjoy it, to go out and buy. Yeah, I think you need a few practice runs putting it up, because I have done. I've done that in the house. Make sure it goes up fine and all that jazz. But it was so much harder out here today. I think it might be to do with the wind or whatever, that I was struggling to get the poles in properly and what have you. But I mean, the water's beading. It is taped and seamed, so you don't have to do any of that. So that's another thing you don't have to do. So it is going to be waterproof. It's the wind aspect of it for me. Is it going to be windproof? I mean, it's up, it's in the wind, and it's working so far, so you never know, it might be right. But the pegs, I would probably buy another set of pegs for it, because one of them's already bent, and I know the ground up here is not that hard, you know. Just, you know, there's a couple of rocks here and there, but you know, apart from that, it's pretty soft ground. It's nice. But yeah, I think what I'll do now is I'll make a brew, get my bed up, get off this cold floor, and yeah, we'll see if we're still up after that. Right, made myself a nice brew. Got one of those, Costa are starting to sell a sachet pack, cappuccino or whatever. I don't want to just call it a latte, because it's pretty much a latte. Well, it's quite nice, that, really nice actually. I just had a Cliff Bar as well, chocolate chip Cliff Bar. That was all right. It wasn't too bad. Quite enjoyed that. The tent's still up, and it's actually taking a bit of a beating, I'll be honest with you, and it's taking it. So quite impressed actually so far. You could actually say that this is a proper test and a proper review of this tent, because it's putting up with it. It's raining. It's quite, you know, quite breezy out there, and it's still up, which is a bonus. So I may as well start thinking about the night then. And what is for tea now? I have had the fire pot meals, I have had the Summit to Eat meals, and now I'm on the adventure food pasta bolognese. Now this, I've had the bolognese of the other brands, so this is like a fair test of, you know, which one's the best. So, and in a bit I'll get that on and you know, see what it's like. But so far so good. There's no water coming in, you know, there's no sort of leaks, if you will. It seems pretty sturdy. The poles haven't snapped, so you know, fingers crossed it stays that way. And yeah, I'll be able to recommend it as a, you know, try it out in fair weather. I would probably just do this in a fair weather, to be honest. But yeah, so far so good. Wow. Right, well, the weather's got worse, and when I say worse, I mean a lot worse. The wind direction's changed, really annoyingly. It's now side on. I repositioned the guy lines as best I could, but it's just ruthless. Now, the roof is leaking, but I don't think that's the fault of the tent, really. I think any design like that, even like on the Nature Hike Cloud Peak 2, where there's a hood
the rain's getting driven underneath the hood, between the hood, and it's just dripping down. But it's just the wind, it can't be helped, I don't think. The poles are doing a solid job. I mean, I'm really surprised for bloody fiberglass poles. It's taking a beat in this tent, and I'll tell you what, it's not bad. So I'm hoping this dies down sooner rather than later, because this is quite bad. Last thing I want to do is have to pack up. I really don't want the poles to snap, because right now the weather's terrible. So I'm just like keeping my fingers crossed that this just stops at some point sooner rather than later. It'd be pretty damn good. But yeah, this weather is crazy. Jesus. So yeah, like I say, the wind direction has changed 90 degrees. It's not good. I don't know if you can see, but the water's just the droplets are just coming in on me. The floor is sort of wet, but it's not too bad. But yeah, the wind direction has definitely really caused me some issues right now. But the tent is standing up to it. Yeah. Well, it's a good test. Right, well, it's tea time. Left this for 10 minutes. I didn't do the 8 minutes like it said, I left it for 10 minutes. It does look a bit watery. Well, we'll just see if the pasta's cooked through. If it has, then it's watery. If not, I'll leave it a bit longer. It's not too bad. Definitely doesn't beat Summit to eat meal, and it isn't a close second. It's just a second. It's a bit bland, to be honest. But it's a meal up a mountain. Yeah, not too bad. I suppose, really, we want to be talking about the pros of this tent. And what are those? Well, it's quite big inside. I think you would comfortably sleep 2 people in this tent. Side by side, no problem. In a lot of tents, it's a bit more claustrophobic than this. It's quite a high tent as well. You can almost be on your knees in this tent, and you know, you're not really going to touch the top. Well, you probably would, but you know, it's not small. It's pretty sizable. The only drawback to that is the high sides, which obviously in the wind hasn't been great. But it's still pretty good. Another positive, I suppose, now is the fact that it's put up with the bad weather so far, and it is. I haven't seen water coming through the material or the stitching. It's literally just been driven in through the mesh vents on the roof and at the back of the tent from the wind and the rain. So I really can't blame the tent for that. It's going to happen with this sort of weather. So yeah, it is waterproof. And yeah, there's a good space in the vestibule. It's not amazing, but you can put 2 pairs of boots in there. You can cook in there, no problem really. I suppose, I mean, we're in winter, so we've got winter weather. That's what we're putting up with. I can't feel a real big breeze come through, because it does sit fairly low to the ground. Not as low as the Helm 2, but it's still pretty good, to be fair, in all fairness. Not very meshy. I don't know what it'll be like for condensation. This sort of weather really is going to drive the condensation out. because of obviously how much wind there is, and a lot of it has ended up on the floor from the water that's coming from the rain in here. There's not, you don't get a footprint. I don't think you can buy a footprint. You might be able to for this, but this it's basically tarpaulin material, the base, so it's not too bad. It is waterproof. It is cheaply made, but for £45 it has to be. But you know what? It surprised me. Well, the weather has improved, the wind has died down, and yeah, the tent is still up, so quite impressed with that. But I think it's time for me to get my head down and wake up in the morning, hopefully to a beautiful morning in the Forest of Bowland. I'll see you guys in the morning. I've had a bit of a sleep, but I sort of woke up. I've got a really horrible pain in my sinus. Struggling to really sleep, and typical, I haven't brought any painkillers or anything like that. So I'm really struggling to get my head down. I've just gone outside, had a bit of a wander around. It's frozen out there. I think it's probably in the minuses out there, but in here it's not felt cold, which is pretty good. Pretty impressed with that. Yeah, but as from I've just got a really bad headache. Oh, so I'm not sure whether I'm going to last up here or whether I should just try and sleep a bit more or whatever. But I think while I'm here, I may as well do a bit of a spec sheet while we're here, and I'm awake. So as you know, it's a 2-man tent. It comes in quite heavy for a backpacking tent. Comes in at 3 kilos. You know, the average backpacking tent, that probably costs quite a bit more, to be fair, 2-man, is around 2 kilos, just above. It's got a 2000 millimeter hydrostatic head, so it is waterproof, the material on the outer. It has put up with it, and it doesn't really give any information about what the maximum wind you should put it in. I still think what I've had it in tonight probably wasn't the best idea. It put up with it, but I can't say that, you know, all of them put up with it, or whether I've got a good one or anything like that. Fiberglass poles for me are a bit brittle, or they can be brittle, so I'd be mindful of that. Like I say, 3 kilos, it's not, you don't really notice it that much. If you're not counting the grams, you know, you're not bothered about that, you just want to get a tent or whatever, it's alright, you're going to be fine. And if there's 2 of you, you can always split the load anyway. It does say that you can pitch it in about 8 minutes. Probably did it in 8 minutes. It wasn't the easiest though. There are tents that are a lot easier to do, a lot quicker. I wasn't expecting the weather that we got, but when we did get the weather, it put up with it fine. It really did, surprisingly well, to be fair. So yeah, I'd probably say, you know what, if you are a first-time wild camper and you're looking for a cheap tent, and just to see if you want to get into it, I would say it is an option. It definitely is an option. You know, £45 is next to nothing. You can get it in green as well. I got it in red because I thought, well, I'll just be silly. I'll just get a bright colour. But yeah, you can get it in green, and I do believe the green most of the time is slightly cheaper anyway. So yeah, it's actually been alright. So I can't complain. I really did come into this thinking quite negatively about it, and I've come out of it thinking, oh, it's not that bad. It's actually okay. I don't want to say it's good, because obviously there are parts of it which aren't great. You know, it does feel cheap. It's not the most well put together tent. You know, there are things like the pegs. If you were going to buy this tent, I would invest in a set of pegs that are decent. Not the bloody things that just bend as soon as you touch it in the ground. But apart from that, yeah, if you want a cheap tent, or even if you're not even looking for a wild camping tent, like, you know, you just want to get a cheap tent for going to campsites in, it's actually perfect. You know what I mean? It's big inside. It will fit a double bed in it. You know, it's not a small 2-man tent. It's quite a big 2-man tent, and there's a lot of room to sit up in. And, you know, it's quite impressive how spacious it is inside. So yeah, I'd recommend it for if you just want to get a tent for campsites or whatever. Wild camping on top of a mountain, probably not ideal, unless, you know, you are guaranteed pretty good weather. Then I would say, yeah, just go for it. Why not? But would I trade the Helm 2 in for this? Probably not. That Helm 2 is a really sturdy tent, really easy to put up, really simple to use, and yeah, I just feel more comfortable in it. But yeah, it's been alright. I've been quite impressed with it. It's surprised me. It's a surprising tent.
Well, hello from my garden, and yes, no morning shots unfortunately. That's because I came down in the early hours of the morning, really didn't feel well. My sinuses were absolutely murdering me. I felt like my head was in a vice, and typical that I didn't take up any paracetamol with me that night. But it wasn't the tent that failed, it was me. So that's a good thing, I suppose. But if you look, I've got it up in the back garden. I'm going to give you a bit of a show around and talk a bit more about it. So, what do I have to say about the tent? Well, I'm actually very impressed by it. It put up with a hell of a lot that night, and it's still standing. Are there problems with the tent? Yes, there are problems with the tent. I'll show you now one of the problems. This isn't really the tent's fault, it's more go outdoors problem. I mean, look at that, it's all bent. Rubbish pegs. Needs better pegs, definitely. Another little gripe I had about this tent was this little flap here. I did close that, I did put that down, but it opened up in the night, and yeah, and it was cold that night, so obviously that wasn't ideal. But it was about 30-mile-an-hour winds, and the poles didn't break, which was a massive surprise. So in that way, I have to take back everything I said about fiberglass poles, because it worked. Now, overall thoughts on the tent. Well, I can't really fault it for £45. I really struggle. Would I take it up a mountain while camping? Probably not. I still don't feel confident in the poles, even though they did literally put up with 30 miles an hour. I just don't feel like
I would trust it as far as I would trust a Helm 2. But positives, what positives can I say about it? Well, it works. No, it is waterproof to the point where if it was just raining and it wasn't driving the rain in, it would be absolutely fine. It's really spacious inside. Really quite impressed with the amount of room you got inside. Good pockets. The front entrance, bit of a letdown for me. I don't really like that too much, but there is enough room when the front's well pegged out for a stove in there, just to cook your boiling water, cook your food or whatever. This would be a great tent for someone who is going campsite to campsite, not going out proper wild camping, just in the back of a car, get the tent out, camp up, going around the country or whatever. It'd be really useful for that. It isn't a bad tent, it's a good tent for £45. I just wouldn't call it a proper wild camping tent. But it was good to test it, it was good fun. And I will be out in it again at some point, do a full night in it. But the actual weather itself I had that night wasn't great, wasn't ideal, but let's put it that way. And it was fine, it put up with it. Braved the elements, more so than me. So anyway guys, thanks for watching the video. Hopefully not a bit of a letdown though, no sunrise in the morning. I'll be back out on it, I'll get you a sunrise, don't worry. And yeah, the plucky tent, the plucky £45 tent, I would actually recommend it. Crazy, I didn't think I was going to, but I take everything I said at the start of the video back completely. So thank you guys for watching. Like it if you like the video, like it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys on the next one.